Scientists say that they have researched a lot about people who are fast decision makers. And one finding is that people who have a clear vision are much faster at making decisions. We could ask ourselves, what's the relationship between my friends and enemies and the friends and enemies of my competitor? Enemy of my enemy is my...
Yes,
very good.
My friend. Yeah.
And finally we have the friend of my friend. That's of course also my friend, and this is now the top secret algorithm of Roman's favorite book, of Facebook.
We can't know what happens in the future, but I think you are all experts in knowing what is hot and what is not. So we speak about trends and hypes.
According to research, most of your work time is spent in this sector. You mostly do things that are not urgent and not important, and that's because it's very easy to do these things. Important sector is the things or the decisions that are important but not urgent. Ask yourself, when do I take the time to make decisions that are important but not yet urgent? Hi, my name is Mikael, I'm from Finland, and this is Roman.
I'm from Switzerland, and we are the authors of the Collaboration book.
It is the fourth book, or is it the fifth book?
It's the sixth, but anyway, what do you want to say?
Okay, so it's the sixth book in our international bestseller series about work life. The first book in this installation was the Decision book.
And in our latest book, the Collaboration book, we look at the fine art of working together.
Because the truth about work is, no one can do it alone. Even a lone warrior needs a team. Yet, most of us have never learned how to collaborate.
And in our little book, we present 44 ideas for working better together. It's a great asset for anyone who wants to succeed as a team.
Go team!
Yes. Let's talk about space and time. The last 2 years revealed something fascinating about office life. People like to work from home, but managers would like to get them back into the office space now. So who's right? Mika?
Well, turns out both are right. Sometimes it's good for us to be at home, but at the same time it would be good if we could be in the office. A giant study at Microsoft showed the problem is not with existing teams. They are okay at home. But it's a problem for new teams, because we don't create any more social bonds if we are remote. There are fewer bridges between the branches. So basically, that's a difficult and dangerous situation for innovation. And it's especially dangerous for the onboarding of new employees. So what should we do about it?
Research suggests a mix of both, home and office. We found a very interesting visual from Gartner Institute that explains the 4 different modes of hybrid work. We slightly adapted.
The first work mode is alone, alone. This means we're at home on our own, we work independently, and we can decide to work according to our own rhythm. In order to foster that, we need to be very careful, because we might suggest there should be offline hours, there should be no Zoom days, there should be no email days, and especially there should be more time for the cat.
Together, alone.
Teams are in the same place at the same time, but they work on their own. Exchange is possible, but we have to try to find moments where people work deeply with more concentration. Maybe this is the return of walls and closed doors in order to foster deep work.
Alone, together.
Now, this is the classic old school Zoom meeting. Everyone is at home, but we all meet digitally in a virtual place. But maybe we should rethink this. We don't all have to be at home in our pajamas staring at the screen. Maybe someone is on a treadmill and someone is walking his dog looking at his smartphone instead.
Woof. And finally, together, together.
So this is your classic meeting, workshop, kickoff situation. And this is very important because it's the only time where we can create shared memories and shared experiences. And it's especially important for new employees because only now can they get the feeling for the company culture. And also, it's the only moment where we might strike upon some new relationships.
So these are the 4 different types of hybrid work.
Please remain standing. For those of you who stand up, now this is a typical good news, bad news situation. מקבלים החלטה.
Achlata, das hat sie gesagt, oder?
Na,
Jetzt.
כך מקבלים החלטה.
החלטה.
Okay.
כך.
מקבלים
Achlata. Okay. Das hier. Aber so.
Dear partners of Gold Ventures Investment, my name is Mikael, I'm from Finland, and this is Roman.
I'm from Switzerland.
We are the authors of The Decision Book. And now we're going to give you a short introduction into the fine art of making the right choices.
For starting businesses and keeping them going, we need to make a lot of decisions. And that's not only true in your business life, but also if your startup is, let's say, a family. Even though we are quite experienced in making decisions, sometimes we struggle and sometimes we don't. So why is that?
Because not all decisions are the same. Roughly speaking, there are 4 different kinds of decisions. And you can align them along 2 parameters. The first parameter is the question, how well can you compare the different options? And the second parameter is, how huge is the impact, are the consequences of your decision? That way you can find the 4 different types in a grid. Let's start with the first example. Do you want to buy an ice cream for $2 or the same ice cream for $3? Now, that's an easy decision, right? Why? Because it's easy to compare the options. There is a right decision, the one is cheaper than the other.
That's what we call no-brainers. Life is full of them, don't waste too much time.
But what if you have low comparability and low impact? For example, should I go out tonight and party, have drinks, meet friends, and have a heavy morning? Or should I do the opposite? Have a boring night, go early to sleep, and feel great in the morning? Now, both options sound good, and both have their advantages and disadvantages, but not the same.
These situations we call no-changers. Yeah, sometimes it's really hard to decide because you want to have both. But in the long run, it doesn't matter what you choose.
Imagine your doctor is telling you, you need to have a heart surgery, otherwise you won't survive. Now, that's a difficult decision, but it's quite easy to make because there is no comparable option. You have no alternative. This is what science is called big choices. But what if you have a decision situation with a high impact and the options are hard to compare? For example, who should I marry? Should I change my job? Should I choose a new business partner? Or should I move from my hometown to the big city? Or the other way around?
These situations are called hard choices because of 3 reasons. First, there's no objective right answer to it. Second, the options are very hard to compare. And 3, the decision will have a huge impact on your life. So this and 49 other thoughts about decision making, theories and helpful tools you'll find in our book. Now I try it in Hebrew. Kach mekablim aklata. For information about our other books and our keynotes, both keynotes physically and now also digitally, you can visit our website, and it's 2topmodels.com. Really.
Working in the remote setting has changed the way we think about working. As a basic rule, we can say the things that were already difficult in a live setting have become even more difficult in a remote setting. Take, for example, collaboration. Working together with people, has always been a minefield. But via Zoom, digitally, it's a war zone. It's almost impossible, but at the same time, it's really necessary. And for remote working concepts, I think the old notion by the American psychologist Paul Watzlawick becomes a new meaning. He famously said, you cannot not communicate. And his example back then was, a husband comes home after a long day of work, he enters the room and his wife asks him, how was your day? And he says nothing. Then she asks, why don't you say anything? He says nothing. Then she gets annoyed because he doesn't say anything. And he gets angry because she's annoyed. And she gets even more grumpy because he's annoyed that she doesn't say anything, and so on and so on. It's a vicious circle and there's no ending. Now, translate that into a remote setting. Just imagine these two people could only communicate via Zoom. That's even more horrible. Like Roman and I, we work via Zoom a lot. Mm-hmm. And I always have the feeling, when I'm talking, he's not listening because he's just reading his emails.
No, I don't.
Oh, yes, you do. And why is that? Well, at Zoom, and we've all experienced it, you cannot at the same time look into the camera and look at the people talking. So there's a constant friction between how we appear and what we actually do.
You cannot... I'm too small, I have to put something. Mikael, you're bigger than me. We knew that. Okay, so you cannot not communicate. But what happens once you start talking? And Mikael and I, we were discussing if the concept of giving feedback might be somehow the core of collaboration. So this moment when somebody comes up with an idea or a proposal and somebody else is reacting to it verbally. And you can do that in a feedback positively or negatively. And that's obvious. But at the same time, you can give a feedback in a constructive way or vice versa, destructively. Now let's have a look how you would start your feedback sentence typically in each of those 4 corners. Negative and destructive, the feedback starts with no and ends with an exclamation mark. in very structured and hierarchical systems, you would giving feedback in that manner. Negative and constructive, the feedback starts with no and continues with because, and then there will follow an explanation. And that's typically how Michael is speaking to his teenage daughter when she's asking to stay out late on weekends, and Michael says no, because, and then mostly there follows a highly irrational explanation why she can't do that. Let's go on the positive side. Destructively, that's the infamous yes, but.
Well, I think we've all had this course where we learned you should give feedback positively. So we start with yes, but, and then comes the same negative explanation as with a no, because. So we can actually say yes, but is just the new no, because.
So how about to start your feedback with yes and? Sounds a bit weird, but let's have a closer look on it.
Now, wait a minute. Here we go. So yes and. Now this may sound just like a little play with words, but actually that's a management method, and it's called appreciative inquiry. The American consultant Cooper Ryder made a very interesting observation. He found out that it's easy to criticize, but it's very hard to criticize constructively. And he urged all his employees to not say, here's the mistake, but interesting idea, and we could do something new with it. So he always started his feedback with yes, and we could do X or Y. So I'd like to give you a little homework. Just observe in the next week how your sentences start when you're giving feedback to your team.
Let's talk about the tools and technologies that help us to collaborate remotely. We were looking for a framework that tries to explain new technologies and their evolvement over time. And we found one at Gartner Institute. It's called the Hype Cycle. Maybe you are familiar with. It operates on two axes. You have the blah, blah, blah axis. That's how we call it. It's how much are people talking about this new technology? You could say what is hot and what is not. And it's compared over time, so you can see the evolvement over time of this specific technology. Every new technology will go through this hype cycle. And it looks like this. There are 5 different stages. The first is the technology trigger.
There we found something called virtual ambient meetings. I don't know if you heard about it. Apparently, you can digitally go into your old office and digitally water your digital plants. I don't know why you would do it, but apparently in a couple of years, we're all going to do that.
The second stage of an emerging technology is the peak of inflated expectations.
Have you heard about Mingler? That's a software solution that offers you the possibility to virtually meet someone you would like to meet who also would like to meet you and talk about your business. So I think that's a little bit like Tinder without touching, right?
Okay, or another example, I think by now we all got at least 5 invitations for Clubhouse. Now, the third stage, that's the descent into the valley of disappointment.
Do you remember Second Life? 2003, that was the big thing. I don't think anyone was using it, but everyone was talking about it. Today, no one is using it and no one is talking about it. But we don't know. If this pandemic situation continues, you will find me in a couple of years walking virtually on a beach and enjoying a gelato.
The fourth stage is called the slope of enlightenment.
So typically, companies and industries are revisiting innovations that lumber down there in the valley of disappointment, and they think, wow, maybe if we change that little and tweak it a bit, it could find a new market.
And finally, you will reach the plateau of productivity. And that's when technologies become part of our life.
If you use the company's name as a verb, then that product is on the plateau of productivity. So you Google things, you Dropbox documents, or let's Zoom.
These are just technological gadgets, and in this very special time and in this remoteness, there's something that is much more important than this, and it's love. But we have bad news. Love is a hype too. You fall in love, so that's the trigger, and you rush up onto the peak of inflated expectations. That's when you know, in a partnership, collaborate blindly. You don't have to talk, you understand each other, everything is fine. And then, after some time, and that's the indication when you start Netflixing on the couch, first together, then a little bit later apart, that's when you know you're rushing down into the valley of disappointment. And once you hit rock bottom, you have two possibilities.
Well, there's the exit option, or you can recalibrate and move into merger and acquisitions, and in romantic settings we call that getting married. And if you're lucky, you might end up with your partner on the plateau of productivity. Thank you very much for listening to our short keynote on collaboration in remote settings. Und bei dem heutigen Motto, Bold is Gold, ist es ja so, wenn man sich nicht entscheidet, existiert man auch nicht. Deshalb heute Abend zumindest die Satisfizer leicht im Vorteil. Hi, I'm Mikael Krogeros, I'm from Finland, and this is Roman Chappeler.
I'm from Switzerland.
We are the authors of the communication book.
And this, that's our iPad.
Roman here is drawing a stick figure. Nothing special, right? But what if your 2-year-old son would have drawn that stick figure? Well, then you would have been very proud and you would hang it up a wall. Now, what if I told you this stick figure was drawn by Pablo Picasso? Then it would be worth millions and it would hang in the Louvre. This is called the framing effect. We react to similar situations differently, depending on how they are presented. It's not about what we say, it's about how we say it. Do keep in mind, if you want to decode messages, always ask yourself, who framed it and why? If you try to explain something very complicated, you of course have to reduce the information somehow. And the best way to reduce is to draw. The difference between what we are and what we want it to be is the reason why we drink alcohol.
Once you reach that point, you have two possibilities.
You can opt out, or you can merge.
Alles Weitere hören Sie jetzt von Roman Chappeler und Mikael Krogeros. Viel Vergnügen.
Ach, 90% von allen Science-Fiction-Büchern sind Mist. Und Sturgeon sagte, das stimmt, 90% sind wirklich Mist. Aber 90% von allen Büchern ist Mist. Das meiste, was wir lesen, ist Mist. Das meiste, was wir im Internet lesen, ist Mist. Sicherlich das meiste, was wir im Internet schreiben, ist Mist. Aber auch die meisten Meetings, an denen wir teilnehmen, sind Mist. Denn wenn 90% von allem Mist ist, dann sind auch 90% der Meinungen, dass alles Mist ist, Mist. Verstehen Sie? Wenn Sie heute das meiste hier Scheiße finden, dann haben Sie recht. Aber Sie dürfen dabei nicht vergessen, dass auch 90% der Meinung, dass alles Scheiße ist, Scheiße ist. Oder anders formuliert, wie kommt es eigentlich, dass ignorante Menschen so ein unglaublich großes Selbstvertrauen haben? Sie wissen, wovon ich spreche, offensichtlich. Diese Frage haben sich vor einigen Jahren zwei amerikanische Forscher auch gestellt. David Dunn und Justin Kruger. Und sie haben sich dem Themenkomplex anhand von 2 Parametern genähert. Sie haben geschaut, wie hoch ist das Selbstvertrauen einer bestimmten Person in einem bestimmten Themenbereich und wie tief ist das Wissen dieser Person über diesen bestimmten Themenbereich. Und das Verhältnis von Kompetenz zu Selbstvertrauen, das lässt sich nun anhand einer recht interessanten Kurvenverlauf darstellen. Wenn Sie auch nur ein ganz kleines bisschen Wissen sich aneignen, dann wächst Ihr Selbstvertrauen massiv. Und Sie landen auf dem Mount Stupid. So nennen das tatsächlich Dunning und Kruger. Das ist der Ort der totalen Selbstüberschätzung. Kleiner Spoiler, nie wieder in Ihrem Leben werden Sie so selbstbewusst sein wie zu dem Zeitpunkt, wenn Sie ein kleines bisschen über ein neues Thema wissen.
Davon hat Michael große persönliche Ahnung, er ist Journalist.
Und wie alle Journalisten weiß ich auch, was dann passiert. Fact-Checking.
Es gibt einen tiefen Fall ins Tal der Ernüchterung. Und wenn Sie da unten in der Talsohle ganz unsanft gelandet sind, haben Sie 2 Möglichkeiten.
Ja, es gibt die klassische Exit-Option, also Themenwechsel, oder wir beginnen mit dem Aktenstudium.
Und jetzt folgt ein langer, mühsamer und steiniger Weg. Bis Sie dann diese Anhöhe erreichen. Und das nennen wir das PhD-Plateau.
Das heißt, das ist auf eine Art der Zenit unserer Bildung. Ja? Wir haben ein Thema wirklich verstanden und durchschaut und vertieft und wir wissen so viel über das Thema, dass wir auch wissen, was wir nicht darüber wissen. Das heißt, wir sind eigentlich sehr gut gewappnet für die Komplexität der Welt. Aber Ihr Selbstvertrauen, das ist noch immer nur halb so groß wie das von den Leuten auf dem Mount Stupid. Was lernen wir jetzt aus dieser Differenz, aus der Höhendifferenz zwischen PhD-Plateau und Mount Stupid? Nun, die Luft wird oben immer dümmer.
Wie kriegt man denn diese Menschen vom Mount Stupid wieder runter? Nun, zum Beispiel, indem man ihnen ein qualifiziertes Feedback gibt. Feedback, das kennen Sie, Sie haben eben diesen Vorschlag oder diese Idee und eine zweite Person oder eine Gruppe reagiert auf diesen Vorschlag. Das kann man typischerweise positiv machen oder negativ, das ist, glaube ich, klar. Und da gibt es eine zweite Dimension, das ist, man kann es konstruktiv machen oder destruktiv. Negatives Feedback, destruktiv, das beginnt mit Nein und hört mit einem Ausrufezeichen auf. Das ist so, wie man in hierarchischen Systemen miteinander kommuniziert. Alle diejenigen, die in der Armee waren oder in einem anderen einschlägigen Bundesbetrieb, die kennen diese Feedback-Kultur. Ja? Negativ, konstruktiv, da beginnt das Feedback mit Nein, Komma, und geht weiter mit Weil, Pünktli, Pünktli, Pünktli. Das ist so, wie man oft so in der Pädagogik eigentlich das macht oder mit unseren Kindern spricht, wenn Michaels 14-jährige Tochter fragt, Vater, kann ich vielleicht am Samstag noch eine Stunde länger in der Stadt bleiben? Dann sagt er Nein, Komma, weil, und dann folgt meistens eine unlogische Erklärung, warum sie jetzt nicht noch eine Stunde länger in der Stadt bleiben kann. Wechseln wir auf die positive Seite, unten rechts, positiv, destruktiv, das weltbekannte Ja, aber.
Hier haben wir gute Nachricht, schlechte Nachricht. Die gute Nachricht ist, Sie fällen bessere Entscheide als die anderen. Das ist ein Fakt. Die schlechte Nachricht aber ist, selbst mit Ihren allerbesten Entscheiden haben Sie so einen leichten Zweifel, ob es nicht vielleicht eine noch bessere Entscheidung hätte geben können. Und das Verhältnis zwischen Happiness und Expectation lässt sich anhand eines schönen Kurvenverlaufs erklären. Wenn Sie 0 Erwartung haben an Ihre Entscheidung, dann ist es Ihnen auch egal, wie sie rauskommt. Je mehr Sie aber erwarten, desto glücklicher werden Sie, wenn es sich als eine gute Entscheidung herausstellt. Allerdings gibt es einen Tipping Point. Wir leben ja in einer Kultur der Perfektion. Wir alle hätten gern den perfekten Job. Wir hätten gern den perfekten Partner. Ich bin sicher, dass Seth würde gern das perfekteste Seth ever veranstalten. Sie möchten gern den perfekten Abend haben heute Abend. Roman und ich hätten gern den perfekten Vortrag heute gehalten. Aber je länger wir uns hier um Kopf und Kragen reden, kriege ich das Gefühl, Perfektion ist ein wenig eine Illusion. Es ist ein bisschen wie Loch Ness, wie Nessie, das schottische Monster im Loch Ness. Es gibt Menschen, die haben ihr Leben lang nach Nessie gesucht, aber gefunden hat es noch niemand. Diejenigen von Ihnen, die unter 5 gescored haben, das nennt die Forschung Satisficers. Satisficer, das ist ein Kunstwort, zusammengesetzt aus den Worten Satisfaction, also Zufriedenheit, und Suffice, Genügsamkeit. Und Sie, die Satisfier sind, haben irgendwie intuitiv verstanden, dass es gar nicht darum geht, die perfekte Entscheidung zu fällen, sondern darum, die richtige Entscheidung zu fällen. Und richtig bedeutet häufig einfach die gut genug ist.
Über 5?
Das nennt die Forschung Maximizer. Das sind Personen, die unbedingt versuchen, das Maximale aus jeder Entscheidung herauszuholen. Und das ist eine gute Eigenschaft, denn das führt zu akribischeren, ehrgeizigeren und damit auch besseren Beschlüssen. Aber es gibt so eine Flipside. Denn unter Umständen suchen sie nach einer perfekten Lösung. Mit anderen Worten, sie suchen nach Nessie. Jetzt sind wir also in dem Quadranten mit New Horizon Entscheidungen. Das sind diese geschäftsverändernden oder manchmal auch lebensverändernden Entscheidungen, mit denen wir uns alle so ein bisschen schwer tun. Am Anfang unserer Karriere war es zum Beispiel die Frage, was soll ich eigentlich beruflich machen? Dann kommt irgendwann die private Frage, soll ich mit dieser Person eine Familie gründen?
Oder soll ich mich trennen davon?
Oder Sie fragen sich vielleicht, sollte ich mein Unternehmen anders ausrichten, nach dem, was wir gerade über Social Media gehört haben? Oder Sie fragen sich, wie eigentlich alles steht da irgendwann, sollte ich vielleicht aus der Stadt aufs Land ziehen? Es ist ein bisschen wie mit der Liebe. Wir treffen ja nicht plötzlich unsere große Liebe, sondern wir stellen diese große Liebe jeden Tag her, indem wir sagen, du bist meine große Liebe. Und Ruth Chang, eine amerikanische Philosophin, von der ein bisschen diese Überlegungen stammen, die sagte einmal, Hard Choices geben uns die Möglichkeit, zu den Autoren unseres eigenen Lebens zu werden.